thousands and thousands of people did this. And they would travel, and it was as they went across the prairie, the middle part of the United States, sometimes there were no trees to burn so that they could have fires at night. And so they would actually collect dried out poo from bison and buffalo and other cattle and things like that, and they would burn that to make campfires for themselves. And they would go in these long trains of wagons, and at night they would circle up for safety, and then they would build one campfire in the middle, and that's where they would have their food, and people would be able to talk to each other, and that's where they would get together. And so the animals that they brought were mainly not horses or donkeys, which is what I would think of. They brought oxen with them. Why do you think they brought oxen?
Because they're powerful.
They're powerful. Can you throw up an ox for me? Okay, and they learned that they thought that the Indians would be their greatest threat, but they learned that illnesses along the way and being too cold or being too hot or too thirsty was what was their biggest danger as they went along their way. So we have a couple of kids who are going to tell us more about the Oregon Trail. So I want you to listen to them, point below to the videos below about them. And I want you to remember from the Oregon Trail that the people went from Missouri all the way to Oregon, that the reason that they were doing it is because they wanted their own places to live with their own land to farm on, and that there were thousands and thousands of people that went, and that it was quite a dangerous journey, but women, men, children, everyone took this journey, and they traveled with oxen primarily to do it with prairie schooners. Put up the word prairie schooners just so they know how to spell it, okay? And our final card from this week is Laura Ingalls Wilder. Laura Ingalls Wilder was born on February 7th, 1867. Can you throw up that with a picture of her? Good job. And she was born in Wisconsin, and I don't know how many of you have seen the videos Little House on the Prairie, but that's one of your favorite video series, isn't it? No? Well, your sisters love it. I think you like it too, secretly. No. Okay. All right. So Laura Ingalls Wilder she was born to Charles Ingalls, and her mom was Carolyn Quinner Ingalls. And as a young girl, she moved across America's heartland. So she actually started out up here, and she moved down just a little bit. And they moved and they left Wisconsin, and then they moved to Minnesota, Walnut Grove, Minnesota, where they lived in a dugout house. Do you know what a dugout house is? Mm-hmm. Can you describe a dugout house?
It's like a house dug into a hill.
A house dug into a hill. Why would they build a house that's dug into a hill?
Because they needed somewhere to sleep, and they couldn't build a regular house yet.
Okay, so they lived in a dugout house, so it would be cooler in the summer and warmer in the winter because you had all that dirt on three sides of your house. But it would kind of be dirty too, wouldn't it? So they moved several times. They moved to South Dakota as well. So throw up where they lived. They lived in Wisconsin, Minnesota, South Dakota, and she got married to Almanzo, whom she called Manly Wilder. And they had one girl, a daughter named Rose. Can you throw her up? And they moved to Mansfield, Missouri. So put up Mansfield, Missouri next. You don't have to write all these down. We're just kind of showing you all of the places that she moved. And they established a farm there and named it Rocky Ridge. And she kept a journal of their travels as they went along. And while they were there, she and Manly got very sick with typhoid, and they moved down to Florida for a year. But she threw up Florida too. She was not happy in Florida at all. So she was much older, and she wrote in the 1920s, she wrote Pioneer Girl, which was about her childhood. And it was probably a really good book, right? And guess what the publisher said? No, thank you. They didn't want it. And so was she discouraged? Did she say, I'm done writing forever? Did she say that? No, she kept on. And so when she was 76 years old, she finished her last book. So her first book that was published was in 1932, and she was 65 years old. That's a pretty old person to write their first book. But she just kept persevering and persevering because she knew that God had given her this talent and she wanted to share it with others. And so at 65, she wrote The Farmer Boy, Little House in the Big Woods, about Manly's childhood. She wrote The Banks of Plum Creek. And so she wrote and wrote and wrote. And in 76 years old, she wrote Little House on the Prairie. So these are some of my favorite books, even if they're not your favorite books, which I don't believe. And she was an amazing writer, and I really think that you should read her books and learn more about her because she was a really neat writer. And if you're not much into reading, I think you should watch Little House on the Prairie on YouTube because those are great shows. So we're done with week 14, and that was 4 cards. Go. That was a lot of cards, but you guys did it, and you did a great job, and we look forward to seeing you next week. We'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.